start to introduce you. So, welcome everyone to another edition of the Elena Avelar seminar on ancient astronomy and astrology. Today we are online for the first time in a while. So today we have with us Levente László as our guest speaker. Levente is a classicist and has done a lot of research in his recent academic path on the history of astrology. He is a recently PhD 2023 with a dissertation on inceptional astrology and the horoscopes of Emperor Zena's anonymous astrologer. And I hope I didn't say anything wrong. He is currently an independent scholar. He has done a lot of work on translating Hellenistic and Byzantine astrological texts and has published some of those works online through a project that he has of his own called the Horror Project, which is dedicated exactly to the translation of these texts. So he is, why I must say, an expert on sources. So he has seen them, he has read them, he has translated a good amount of them. And today he's presenting us with some examples of practical astrology that was happening exactly in Byzantium at the 11th century. So thank you very much, Levente, and you have the stage.
Thank you very much, Luis. Thank you for having me, for inviting me. Okay, let me share my presentation with you. And yes, you said very well that I chose a topic that I thought would be lovely to Elena as well. And this is practical astrology. More specifically, I will talk about a few understudied Byzantine horoscopes from the 11th century that exemplify astrological predictive techniques. But first I will talk about the sources because this is something that must be done, and then I will go into the details. Okay, so the early 14th century manuscript Greek 2506 kept in the National Library of France in Paris is a manuscript that contains a huge astrological compendium of compiled from various sources, and this is divided now into more than 500 chapters. Most of its material is shared with another a little bit later, a late 14th century manuscript kept in the same library. And in this shared material, one can discover altogether 11 chapters, which partly discuss astrological theory, but also have about a dozen horoscopic illustrations. One of these chapters are also contained in a manuscript kept in Venice, and this is which you could see in the cover. This is from this manuscript. And if we look at these horoscopes, then we can discover that at least 10 horoscopes can be dated, and they can be dated between 972 and 1011. And we will also discover that some internal evidence suggests that these horoscopes were composed sometime between August 1012 and October 1019 in Constantinople. Now, it is really surprising that it seems that so far only 3 chapters have been edited containing these horoscopes, of which one chapter has only been partially edited in the 1920s by Franz Cumont. We don't know the name of the author, the astrologer, or the scholar who composed these horoscopes or composed these chapters altogether, although David Pingree, who identified most of the horoscopes and also dated them, not all of them, but most of them, theorized that they belong to a certain Demophilus. Now, I disagree. And I have two reasons to disagree with Pingree. On the one hand, a certain Demophilus is cited by the 5th century astrological author Julianus of Laodicea. So if Demophilus, an astrologer Demophilus, lived and there were no more Demophiluses, then he must have been earlier than the end of the 5th century CE. And also, if we look at the prosopographic material, so the names used in various periods of history, we will discover that the name Demophilus virtually disappears from the record after about 500 CE. So it is very unlikely that an astrologer or a scholar named Demophilus could be active in early 11th century Constantinople. Here is a chart containing all the chapters where you can find horoscopes. And I don't want to go through each entry because it would be really long and boring. So I would like just to highlight the most important things. In the first column, you will see the manuscript sources. I use different sigla to denote the manuscripts, B, Z, and H. And I also use the format of Professor Stefan Heiland's catalog of Greek horoscopes to describe the horoscopes present in this collection. These horoscopes are partly inceptions and partly nativities, and there is one horoscope in this collection that is a solar return for the year 1011, and it belongs to a nativity that is dated to the year 984. Also, we can see that sometimes the same horoscope, specifically this nativity dated to October 11th, the 11th, 984, is used in many chapters. And also what we can discover that in each and every case, the purpose of describing these horoscopes is always, without exception, to exemplify, to illustrate different predictive techniques. So I would like to move on and to speak about these predictive techniques. In the horoscopes, I have been able to study, and it seems that I have already translated each of the horoscopes into English, and they can be studied on my webpage. I will give you the reference in the last slide with the bibliography. So in these horoscopes, we can discover at least 7 different predictive techniques used alone or in combination with others. These predictive techniques are activations based on planetary periods and the ascensions of the zodiacal signs, directions, profections, transits, solar returns, the so-called zodiacal releasing, and the so-called decennials. Don't worry if you don't know what each of these predictive techniques mean, because I will summarize them briefly. And I will also show how in 3 horoscopes these techniques are used by the astrologer, or by the scholar, by the author. Let's call him just the author, and what this body of horoscopes can teach us about the practice of astrology in 11th century Byzantium. So the first is planetary periods and sign ascensions. This is a technique that is the most detailed description is found in book 7 of Vettius Valence's Anthologies. Is based on of course, the planetary periods and on sign ascensions, and it is about some activations where different planets or different planetary configurations get activated. Now, the planetary periods are originally Mesopotamian values used for each of the 7 planets. For example, the number 12 is used for Jupiter as its so-called minor or least years, because these 12 years correspond to Jupiter's zodiacal period in years. So, for example, this is one value that we can discover for the planetary periods. On the other hand, sign ascensions can also be utilized in this scheme, and sign ascensions are the length of the signs in right ascensions, which ultimately depend on geographical latitude. So whereas the length of a sign in zodiacal degrees is always 30, depending on the geographical latitude, their length in right ascensions can be significantly longer or significantly shorter. For example, if we are in Constantinople and we use Ptolemy's handy tables for the latitude of Constantinople, then we will work with 20 degrees 36 minutes for Aquarius, because this is Aquarius's sign ascension. Now, individual values, either planetary periods or sign ascensions, can be understood as years of activation. They can be also added to each other, and the sum can also be understood as years. And what is more, following Valence's footsteps, our astrologer also tells that the halves and the thirds of these values or the sums could also be used for activations. Now, if you look at the slide, then you will see a chart, and this chart is a modern reproduction of a inception dated to 977, which is the time for the time when the famous Byzantine general and politician Bardas Phocas was released from his exile by the Emperor Basil II. The astrologer uses this inception to predict how long sort of a power struggle and enmity will continue between Bardas Phocas and the emperor. From Byzantine history, we know that he had revolted against the predecessor of this emperor, and that's why he was exiled. But then, when there was another revolt by another general, he was revoked. But even then, after a couple of years, there was a revolt again against the emperor, and before it could have failed or could have succeeded, he died unexpectedly on the battlefield due to a heart attack. Now, this happened 11 years later than the inception, and the author tries to find which activations showed this outcome. Now, there are different things that he puts together. For example, he starts that with the idea that he looks at the Lord of the Ascendant, which is Mercury. So the ascendant is Virgo, and the Virgo's lord is Mercury, and also looks at the lord of the moon, which is Jupiter, and Mercury's planetary period is 20, Jupiter's planetary period is 12, the sum is 32. He says that the third of this is 10 years and 8 months. We don't know why he chooses these significators. We only know that these sort of fit to the wished time frame. He also chooses some more significators to confirm his finding. So, for example, he says that we look at the sign of Jupiter. This is Aquarius. Its ascension is 20, the half of which is 10, so 10 years. That's a confirmation. Or we could even look at the lord of Jupiter, so the domicile lord of Aquarius, which is Saturn, and the planetary period of Saturn is 30, the third of which is 10 years, once again. Or there is a combination of the lady of Mercury, Venus, who is basically, let's say, the lady of the lord of the ascendant, and her 8 years are combined with the 12 years of Jupiter, which is 20, and half is 10 years. And he just goes on and comes up with some more values for 11 years or 11 and a half years, which are more or less the same as the expected 11 years and 11 months corresponding to Focus's death. So this is the first type of technique that he uses in one of the horoscopes. But let's see the other one. Directions. The idea of directions is that we choose a significator in the horoscope. It can be typically the ascendant, or it can be another planet, a planet or another angle, for example. And we move it in the zodiacal order. In the motion, we take 1 degree of right ascension for 1 year. So it is not in zodiacal degrees, but somehow the zodiacal degrees are projected on the celestial equator. In the antiquity, that was normally done by using the so-called ascension times, but also later, after the publication of Ptolemy's handy tables in the 2nd century and the subsequent discovery by the astrologers, the usage of these tables became widespread. The directions, and so this technique is used by our author in at least 5 horoscopes, of which I would like to highlight a single one. This is an inception dated to September the 21st, 1001, and this is again an inception. This is the installation chart of a bishop of a Greek island. And the event that he seeks is an infamous event, because on April the 18th, 1009, the bishop was exiled to Italy. So he was banished, first accused and then banished. Of course, a couple of years later, he was allowed to come back. But our concern is that what is the indication for such an infamous occurrence? Now, the astrologer chooses the moon as a significator, and he says that the moon's direction to the square of Mars indicated the time of this event. So we see that the moon's position is, let's say, the 17th degree of Libra, and Mars's position is the 24th degree of Cancer. So if we talk about the square aspect, then we should look at the 24th degree of Libra. And these 7 degrees between the position of moon and the aspect point or ray of Mars is it corresponds in right ascensions to more or less the needed years. Only a couple of days are off. So it looks like it was a nice hit. The only question is that what made the astrologer or the author to choose the moon and not another significator? Because normally we would expect astrologers to choose the moon for events related to the body and not to reputation and position and offices and things like that. Regardless, the choice of Mars's square is fitting because Mars is a malefic, and malefics do nasty things, such as expelling people from their offices. But a more interesting thing is that he is not contented with using directions for this event. He also ventures into using another predictive technique, that is profections. The idea of profections is that we assign 1 year to a certain sign. For example, we assign 1 year to the sign of the ascendant, and the following year will be assigned to the following sign, and the 3rd year to the following sign, and so forth until we reach the 12th sign from the ascendant. Let's say, because normally or most typically the ascendant is profected, but other profections are also possible. And then the cycle restarts. So the sign of the ascendant will be assigned to the 13th year, to the 25th year, to the 37th year, and so forth until we get bored with using profections. Within yearly profections, the same layout is used for monthly profections. So, for example, we reached the 3rd sign from the ascendant for the 3rd year, and within the 3rd year, the 1st month will be assigned to this sign, and the next month will be assigned to the next sign, and so forth until we exhaust all the 12 months of the year. And within months, we can do the same with the days, giving 1 sign to the days. There are some variations in the usage of profections, because Ptolemy has a different idea about how to distribute the months and the days. And at least in one horoscope, the author also observes these teachings, but unfortunately the text is so dense and so confusing that the details are not really clear to me. Now, our author uses yearly, monthly, and daily profections to confirm his finding by directions. by one direction, to be precise. Quite surprisingly, he takes the 18th day of the 8th month of the 8th year, although it is not precise either using calendar years, months, and days, or using an idealistic scheme in which a year equals 12 months, which equals 360 days. So it is not good in any ways, but at least his findings sort of support his initial discoveries, because in the 8th year, we come from the ascendant sign to the 8th sign, which is Gemini, and we find the malefic Saturn in this sign. So this is an indication for something terrible. If we go down to the monthly perfection, we count from this sign of Gemini, and if we count 8 signs, then we will come to Capricorn, which is right in the opposition of Mars, the other malefic. Now, in the month, within the month, we need to look at the 18th day, and the 18th day goes back to Gemini, because this is the first day, and at the same time the 13th day, and we go like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, so we'll get back to Saturn in Gemini. So far so good. If we disregard the fact that not the right time, the right day and the right month was used for this scheme, then we will see that everything perfectly confirms the astrologers, the authors' original findings. He also adds that the transits, so the current planetary positions, are valid at that time on the day, on the very day of the exile, confirmed these findings, although he doesn't give us any details, so we don't know how he means this. The yearly perfection and the monthly perfection also reappears in another nativity, in another horoscope, because actually this is the first nativity I'm going to speak about. And this is the nativity of 984, which is possibly his own nativity, because he uses this at least 3 times. He investigates the native's 28th year, which corresponds to the Byzantine year 10, 11, 10, 12. Actually, not Byzantine year, but his own year of life. And he combines perfections with the solar return for that year. The solar return is a semi-independent chart. I say semi-independent chart because this is a sort of auxiliary chart cast for a nativity. The idea is the following. When we cast a nativity or an inception, the sun is in a certain position, and the sun will be in the same position in a year from that time. Now, the idea came quite early in antiquity that for this return, another chart could be erected, and this chart could be analyzed in view of the original nativity to give some insight for the upcoming year. Now, this is exactly what we see here. In this illustration, you can see that the inner circle contains the nativity, and the outer circle contains the solar return for the year 1011. And you can also discover that the positions for the sun are identical, which is something that we expect. Now, this is the 28th year, and we start the perfections. So the ascendant is in Gemini, and the 25th year will be also in Gemini. So 25, 26, 27, 28, we will reach Virgo. And he says that the rulers of this year, based on the perfection, are Mercury, because Mercury is the domicile and exaltation lord of Virgo. And he also adds that Venus is also a co-ruler of the year, because Virgo belongs to her triplicity, and also the degree of Virgo, that is the same degree as the ascending degree, that is the 8th degree in Virgo, is Venus's bound. So we have two rulers, and what he says is that as these planets were in good condition in the nativity, so we can see Venus here and Mercury here, it is not detailed why he says that they were in good condition. They signify advantages and learning on the one hand, and support marriage and friendships with powerful people on the other. He also says that this year is going to be good in general, because in the yearly sign we will find, so in Virgo, we will find the two benefics, Venus and Jupiter, who indicate marriage and children respectively. At least this is what we see in the nativity, but this is sort of confirmed by the solar return, because we will find Venus exactly in the same sign here, and we will also find Jupiter configured. It is a square, but still configured. Still, he says, there will be conflicts, because Jupiter in this solar return is in opposition with the natal ascendant, and this opposition means that there will be some open enmity with other people. So these are the yearly indications given by the author. Now he goes on and he starts interpreting the months one by one. I don't really want to go through all of them because it would be really long and tedious, but the overall logic is that when he goes into the interpretations, he uses the rulers of the monthly signs, looks at the planet and looks at the planets in the sign, in the nativity and in the return. And this is how he makes some conjectures. The only problem is that there are some miscalculations. The first important miscalculation is that in the return, he put Mars in Scorpio and Mercury in Libra, but in fact, according to the handy tables that he obviously used, he swapped the positions of these two planets. So Mercury should have been in Scorpio and Mars should have been in Libra. There is another thing which I will also highlight when the occasion comes. So let's see two examples of monthly perfections. So the yearly sign was Virgo. Now, this corresponds to the first month of the year as well. But if we go on and look at the second month, we will arrive in Libra. He says that Libra is good because we will find Saturn here in the return, which is right, and Saturn in Libra is exalted. So he should show something good. Also, Libra is the domicile of Venus, and Venus, among others, can indicate wedding, and this is how he interprets this circumstance, that the monthly sign is in Libra, is Libra itself. Now he goes on and also tells us that the third month is also going to be profitable because its ruler is Mars. So Scorpio's ruler is Mars, and as he says that Mars is in a good condition in the nativity, which is not explained in any ways. So we'll find here, according to his calculation, but in fact, Mars was around the end of Cancer at that time. Yeah. But he also adds that, and I thought that was the funniest part of this whole collection, is that the presence of Mars, which is not valid, actually, as I told you. So the presence of Mars in the solar return in Scorpio indicated a minor illness by excessive wine consumption. So I don't think that anything like this could be predicted. This very example nicely illustrates the point that what our author is doing with this horoscope and with the other horoscopes is a sort of a retrospection and an analysis of past events through the lens of astrological predictive techniques. Okay. Now, let's see what remains. In another chapter, the same nativity is used to demonstrate other predictive techniques, and the more important of these predictive techniques is the so-called zodiacal releasing. Zodiacal releasing is a modern moniker for a technique that was apparently described or even invented by a single individual, that is Vettius Valens, who describes this technique in book 4 of his anthologies. Apart from later abridged copies of his chapters, his technique was completely forgotten and was only discovered after studying Vettius Valens's text in the modern times. So it is quite surprising and quite a novel discovery that our author in the 11th century seems to have been completely aware of this technique. Now, what are the basics of this technique? First of all, we will work with numbers, and these numbers are the numbers of the planetary periods. So, for example, 12 for Jupiter. I guess this is just enough. According to Valens's instructions, we start from the so-called lot of fortune, or its counterpart, the lot of diamond, but we will focus on the lot of fortune. And we look at the sign of the lot of fortune. We look at the sign and we see and we assign the years of its planetary ruler to this sign. So for example, as this is 12, the first 12 years will be indicated by Sagittarius, because the lot of fortune is in Sagittarius. After the 12 years, we will move on to Capricorn and assign the corresponding years to Capricorn and to Aquarius and so forth until we run out of lifetime. Within these, let's say, level 1 periods, there are minor periods, sub-periods, level 2, 3, 4 sub-periods, which are based on the fraction of 1/12. So for example, if the Sagittarius Jupiter level 1 period is 12 years, then it's 1/12, that is 1 year, that is 12 months, will be the period for the level 2 sub-period. Its 12th part, that is 1 month or 30 days, will be the level 3 period, and the level 4 period will correspond to 2 days and a half. In this scheme, at least as it is described by Valens, we assume the idealistic scheme for the year that consists of exactly 12 months and exactly 360 days. Now, he investigates certain dates, and one of these dates is sometime between July and September 10/12. We started to move the lot of fortune, so to release, to use the technical expression. And after the first 12 years, we arrived in Capricorn, and the whole period for Capricorn is 27 years. Within these Capricorn Saturn level 1 period, the sought time is in the Scorpio Mars level 2 period, which started in September 10/11 and finished in December 10/12. Within this level 2 period, the level 3 period is a 50 days period assigned to Gemini and its ruler, Mercury. Now, he says that in this 50 days period, the native had to meet financial, work-related, and other problems because the level 2 ruler, Mars, transmitted to Mercury. So somehow it's Mars's malefic power was invested on Mercury, and also, he says, quite surprisingly, because Mars was together with Mercury in the solar return. Now, this is false in either way. Even if we use his own corrupt data, we will see that Mars and Mercury are in different signs in the solar return. If we use the right calculation by Ptolemy's handy tables, we will find them to be in different signs again, but in the exchanged way. So Mars in Libra and Mercury in Scorpio. And the same is valid for any sort of modern calculations. So I don't know what he meant, but this is only one instance of many perplexing instances in the text. Some of them might be due to textual corruptions, because in any ways the earliest manuscript was written in the early 14th century, and the examples were written 300 years before. But there are also things that cannot be explained very easily. But what is interesting, that he is not satisfied by using the zodiacal releasing combined with the solar return, but he also introduces a novel alternative zodiacal releasing scheme, which he combines with another predictive technique, and this is going to be the last one, the so-called decennials. The idea of decennials is that in some ways a Time Lord system is established. The planetary periods that I have mentioned related to the first predictive technique and related to zodiacal releasing as well. So these periods are understood as months. So for example, within the scheme, 12 months are assigned to Jupiter. Now, similar values are assigned to each of the remaining 6 planets, and they altogether yield a total of 120 months. Now, there are different approaches how to put this theoretical idea into practice, and the authors who describe this differ in some key details. But the idea is that the whole cycle consists of 120 months, 29 months, and then the cycle restarts. Now, you can discover that the value for the Jupiter period is identical to the level 2 subperiod of Jupiter in zodiacal releasing. And this is true to the other planets as well. However, in the decennials, at least in the original idea, there are subperiods, but the subperiods are not like in the zodiacal releasing, that every subperiod of the superior period is the 1/12 of the superior period, but these are proportional. So somehow within, let's say, a Jupiter period of decennials, 12 months, we divide these 12 months into 129 segments, of which Jupiter will have 12 segments, and the other planets will get their own segments corresponding to their periods. So, for example, in this way, Jupiter would get a subperiod of 33 days. Now, the author use level 3 subperiods in alternative zodiacal zodiacal releasing system, in which he does not use the idealistic years and months and days, but he calculates with calendar years, months and days. So this is obviously an experiment, what he does, and this is a sort of a hybrid approach to zodiacal releasing in a novel way, combined with decennials. So, for example, he starts with a level 1 Capricorn Saturn period, And within this, he identifies an 8-month period that he assigns to Libra and Venus. And this is between June 10, 11 and February 10, 12. And within these 8 months, he identifies a level 3 period consisting of 28 days, which belong to Scorpio and Mars. And he says that in this time, where there was this level 3 period that belonged to Mars, the native was ill because Mars is in Saturn's square in the nativity. In this alternative scheme, he doesn't use any references to the solar return. He just refers to the essential meanings of the planets and their configurations in the nativity. So he says that, here is Mars, and Mars is in the square of Saturn. The only problem is that, in fact, Mars should be in Cancer, and this should be not a square, but a trine from Saturn, although we can still admit that Saturn is a malefic. Or for another level 3 period, which is between the very end and the beginning of the upcoming year, 10-12. He says that, and this is also a Mars period, but now Aries Mars period. He says that the native was anxious because of a woman, because Venus was the ruler of the level 2 period, and Mars was the ruler of the level 3 subperiod under this, or within this. And thank you very much. Okay, now let's summarize what these set of horoscopes can teach us. It is very interesting and very unusual that various predictive techniques were so detailed and were described in a so detailed way. We won't find this subtlety in any other set of horoscopes. But the question arises that in different contexts, why this predictive method was used and why not another? Why was, in some cases, a single one used, and why were they combined with other methods in other cases? Even within a single horoscope or a single demonstration of a technique, we can remain perplexed, confused why a certain significator was used, chosen, and not another one. I gave you the example of the moon used for a direction concerning an office and honors. What is also interesting is that we meet imprecise data in many cases. On one hand, these are from the accumulated imprecision of Ptolemy's handy tables that by the 11th century had become obsolete, but were still used by the authors, and also by the authors' own calculation errors that were demonstrated in the latest horoscope. And the final thing which I would like to highlight is that if we look at his examples, we will find that with one exception, which is prediction for a native's father, all the other predictive techniques are used not for foresight, but for sort of retroactive justifications of events that had already happened. Now, this leads me to the last question, that what is the purpose of this body of chapters here? So what was on the mind of the author, who obviously filled a now lost manuscript with his notes, with his really detailed notes, and not only with his horoscopes, but also with some theoretical descriptions, theoretical ramblings. So what was his purpose with that? And I don't think that we have any more plausible explanation than that he was experimenting with the techniques that he inherited from his predecessors, some of them, some of whom he names, for example, Valens, Dorotheus, Hephaestio, and Maximus, also refers to Ptolemy. So what he did was experimenting with these predictive techniques. But in any case, however we evaluate his success, I guess that we can state that this body of text is really valuable, because this is really extraordinary and really differs from the other types of text we are used to. Thank you very much. The last page is the bibliography with the additions and translation and further literature. I just want to highlight that if you are interested in the texts themselves, then you can visit my webpage, patreon.com/horoi-project, and by using the tag HAS, like Elena Avalar Seminar 2404, you will find all the English translations of these chapters. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Levente. Very condensed, I would say, and dense presentation of this use of predictive techniques. I will now open the open for questions. We have time for a few.
Okay. I was a bit long, wasn't I?
That's fine.
Okay.
So are there any brave?
Yes, I have a question, if I can.
Okay, Margherita, please.
Okay. A question about the slide about perfected months and solar return. Maybe you could share again, so it's easier for me.
Yes, sure. Okay, so let me share this. Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, here we go. All right. So here is, so the monthly perfection, right?
Yes, monthly perfection.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it should be, so that's it.
Okay. I want just to ask if we use the natal chart only for calculating the months, but then we should not compare the two wheels. For example, you talked about Mars, no? But there is Saturn in the radix chart.
That's right. Well, it seems that he uses the planet's natal positions whenever he wants to. Okay, so so if it doesn't fit into his agenda, then the natal positions are just overlooked. I couldn't discover any sort of regularity in the technique.
Okay, I understand. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for asking, Margherita.
Okay, we have another question. Susan, please.
Hi, thank you. Very interesting, Levente. Thank you very much. I was interested in your suggestion that this may just have been experimental. He's testing various techniques.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if you could tell from the text if this was someone who was speaking from some astrological maturity, or whether he may have been a student, someone learning, and was therefore experimenting through learning. I wonder if there were any clues to that.
Well,
Maybe not.
well, thank you very much for the question, and it's a very good question, I must say. Well, I don't think that it can be answered definitely. I mean, we don't know that whether this person was a student and was this is a part of his own study or his guided study, or he was an expert. The problem arises partly from the fact that apart from the chapters containing the horoscopes that are dated to the same era, we don't really know which are the very chapters that belong to him. So whether the ones between the horoscopes, but which don't contain any horoscopes, or the ones before that or after that, this block were his or belong to other astrologers.
Oh.
So it is an open question, but thank you very much for raising this question, because this is something that I haven't thought about, and I will try to find the solution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, Stephen, please.
Very much. I had a rather similar thought, actually, which was not about maturity or being of learner status, but do you have a sense through the manuscript of this as being someone who is studying in a solitary way or as part of a sort of larger community? And I was first thinking about that in relation to the calculation mistakes, that if you find that, it might suggest that this is not part of a group of people who are commenting, looking at each other and discovering problems. And I can understand it might be very difficult to sort of answer, is this one person, is it a larger group? But as one way of getting towards that, I did just want to ask you to sort of step back and say a bit more about the character of the surrounding chapters, the ones that don't have the practical worked examples. I mean, does this look like it's a lot of very sort of precise detail that you need to be sharing with other people, or is it more elementary? Yeah, I hope that's clear enough.
Yeah. Well, these are multiple questions and observations, but I will try to address each of them. That's a very good question to ask, whether the astrologers might have been someone working alone or working as a part of a bigger group. And I don't think that for the time being it can be answered, but there are some instructive parallels. Okay, let me start with the fact that we basically we know very little about Byzantine astrology. I mean, how astrology was practiced in these times, because even if we have some instances, some clues about individuals working, for example, in the late 9th century or in the mid 11th century, we don't know the names, and so we can't really see any sort of networks between them. But what we can discover, and I can assure you that this is true, is that in the 14th century, which is of course much later than the 11th, there was evidently a circle of scholars, some of which are known by name, who worked together in copying astrological texts, revising astrological texts, and some of these manuscripts that are still extant were obviously used for school purposes, as school textbooks. So by this, I would conjecture that that it might have happened for our case that this this author was a student working under under a teacher, and these chapters constitute his study notes. But of course we don't know it for sure. Another question you asked, that what the nature of these calculations is, and I would say that they go far beyond of the simplicity of ordinary astrologers, but we don't have any opportunity to compare it to other productions. So basically, from this time, these are the only practical computations, and we don't know whether they reflect an advanced level or whether that was deemed very basic at the time. I hope I could answer your questions. So thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else with a question? We have time for one more.
Feel free to ask me. I love questions. With each question, my XP grows.
We have one. Alex, do you want to?
Yeah.
Alex, and then Victor. Okay.
Hi.
You'd mentioned that there was, of the set, there was one that was not a retrospective. The one that was not the retrospective looking, was that predictive at all, or was it just like very minimal in what it was trying to present as far as information?
Okay. Well, I would say that the wording is different for that, and that's why I believe that it was calculated, and the prediction was made before anything would actually happen, right? I will tell you what it is. There is a chart dated for 1006, and from this chart, very interestingly, not the fortune of the native, but the fortune of the native's father is predicted, sort of, right? I would say that there are two predictions, and one thing is that prior to the birth of this person, like 6 years before the native was born, we are told that the father had some financial difficulties, and these financial difficulties were shown by the converse direction of the significator of the father, the son. So, and that was a aspect with Mars. So that was in the past. And then he goes on that but the upcoming direction of the sun shows that in 13 years time, counted from the birth of the native, there will be a sextile to Jupiter, and this sextile to Jupiter will show something. And he says, and I will cite, he will be offered the position of a judge, a clerk, or an imperial secretary, or he will be invited to deal with public affairs or something like that. So we are not told exactly what would happen, just something like this would happen. And I believe this is a nice instance of an unverified prediction. So what I believe is that basically all these charts were composed sometime in a very short period around 1011 and 1012. But this is the only one which is worded in this way.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, now Victor had a question, the last one.
Hi. On
Hello.
the error of Mars and Mercury, do you think he had wrong handy tables, or he might be interested in lying for some reason on the, because it takes a long effort to do a study like he did, you know, and write it and everything to make such a huge error. I mean, you can go for one planet, but for both, and then the whole method is based on something which we know it's wrong, but we don't know if he knew it was wrong, if he made it. What do you think is the most close approximation for such a taking such an error?
Given the fact that normally, and thank you very much for the question. So given the fact that he normally produces quite precise data, there are only a couple of minor no, there are some minor discrepancies, but very infrequent major discrepancies. I would say that this is a calculation error. Calculation errors are not this is not a rarity in historical horoscopes, and it also shows that that, how to say that, so that the imprecision of data was something that was in the pack of cards, and they had to cope with that. And I don't think that there was any sort of instance of dishonesty. I do believe that if the astrologers had found that his calculations were in error, then he would have done his best to fix this and to find some different significators to save the phenomena to match the indications of the chart and the reality. Apart from this, we can see the same things in other corpuses as well. So, for example, in the corpus of Zeno's astrologer, we can discover that in one case he uses the moon's position in a wrong form, and he goes on talking about how the moon's position will show the subject of the inception and so forth. And this is not correct in any ways. But even if we just remove this in from the picture, we will still have valuable information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll wrap this now. I'm going to take my host privileges and also say something. I think that, it was very interesting to see this example of this specific practice, because this came up during the questions. We very rarely have a good notion what they're doing in that particular context of the world, in that particular language. And it is interesting to see these niches where you can see techniques like the Zodiacal releasing that appear nowhere else so far that we know of. And here we have an example. So to a certain point, that survived somewhere in that tradition, even if it's just a glimpse, you know, an attempt to use it. So this is very interesting. And I'm sure as the discipline of history of astrology develops and we are able to see more of these unknown pockets or more anonymous pockets of astrological production and practice, I think we'll find these local, I wouldn't say anomalies, but specificities, you know, in the practices. So I think it was very interesting to hear you on this and give these examples of how certain methodologies might survive in certain traditions that don't survive in others, and give a little bit more color to sometimes a very monochromatic sort of Eurocentric perspective of the history of astrology that unfortunately it's the majority. So
Indeed.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to me.
It was a pleasure. So I'll close the session now. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Levente, for the wonderful lecture and for the availability to be here with us. And thank you for all of the participants to be here. And I hope to see each other soon in another seminar.
Bye-bye.
Bye.